The time is 5:30 p.m. on Monday, December 11th, and I'd like to call this work session to order. First on our agenda are city updates, specifically about the election, the mayoral election. So, Ms. Lano, do you have any city updates before we transition to the clerk?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. There's only one city update before I transition to city clerk for the runoff election updates. And that is the Your Idea, Your Neighborhood. The actual applications open December the 1st, and they are available on the city's website. They will remain open until January 31st before the committee is in the process of being formed. And then evaluations will begin starting in February of all of the applications. So again, the Your Idea, Your Neighborhood applications are available on the city's website at pueblo.us. And that's the only city update before the election update. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question, Ms. Lano? Is the committee that's going to review those applications? I know there was also applications out for that. Has that committee been selected yet?
The committee has not been selected, but the review team to select the committee has been selected. And the review team is made up of Councilor Maestri, an HR, and I believe our purchasing director, Ms. Naomi Hedden. Okay. And we will be back with the full committee to present to City Council before they start their evaluations in February.
Great.
Thank you.
Ms. Stoller.
Good evening, Chair Martinez, members of City Council. I am delighted to be here to share some information about our upcoming mayoral runoff election. As you all know, the runoff election did come down to the need for runoff. No mayoral candidate got over 50% of the vote. And so the top two vote getters from that initial mayor election in November are going to go to a runoff that will be held on January 23rd, 2024. And the candidates for the election will be President Graham and the incumbent Mayor Gradisar. So some information about people who are looking to vote in that election. This is going to be a mail ballot only election because this is run strictly by the city. The county had a conflict and was unable to run this election because of the presidential primary coming up in March. They're going to have UOCAVA ballots going out at the same time that some of our ballots are being collected, and a lot of their equipment can only support one election at a time. So the city will be running this election, and there will be no in-person voting machines. So everyone will be voting their mail ballot. My entire staff will be sworn in as election judges. So we do invite the public to come to the city clerk's office with any issues, and we can help. So if there's an issue with the ballot is spoiled, you can come and get a replacement ballot at the city clerk's office. If there is a ballot that you don't receive, you haven't received it, then you're also welcome to come to the city clerk's office, and we're happy to issue a replacement ballot. And then even if you do get that other ballot, that ballot will be not counted. So I just basically want to share some additional information. I kind of assume that most people are already registered to vote, but they can register to vote still at online at govotecolorado.gov, the Secretary of State's website. And we would encourage them to register to vote online early and then come and pick up their ballot the following day, so the county has their opportunity to put them on the voter list. And then on election day, we will have some contingencies made so that they will be able to sign up to vote at my office, and then we'll contact the county, and the county will put them on the list, and then we'll be able to give them their ballot. But it is a more complicated process to do it day of. And so I really do encourage anyone who's not already registered to vote to sign up early. And then that same website, govotecolorado.gov, can also be used to update voter addresses and any other additional information that might need to be updated for voter registration. And then the only other thing that I'd really like to emphasize is that ballots do have to be received by the city clerk's office by 7 p.m. on election day. So with this being a mail ballot, we do encourage people to mail their ballots in, but at a certain point, we would not necessarily recommend that they mail their ballots in, because postmarking it for election day will not count as it being received by the clerk's office. So I do want to make that distinction clear, that it needs to be in the hands of the clerk's office and not in the hands of the post office by 7 p.m. on election day. So ballots are going to be mailed on January 2nd, and people should start receiving them January 3rd, 4th. And then I did also want to emphasize the drop boxes that will be open. The county is allowing us use of some of their drop boxes for this election, but it is a smaller number than people might be accustomed to in the countywide elections. So there are only 4 drop box locations within the city that will be accepting them, and we will put notices on the ones that are closed with directions to the nearest drop box so that people have information on where they can go. And so these drop box locations that are open 24 hours are going to be at the Colorado State Fairgrounds outside of the Prairie Avenue Gate, at Colorado State University Pueblo, which you can access from Gonzales Drive, but it's by the fountain over there. And the Pueblo County Courthouse, which is on the west side off of Court Street, and then the Lamb Branch Library behind the building. But again, we do emphasize, like, it's only a 1-question ballot. So hopefully there won't be too much decision making that has to be done on most people's part. So we are encouraging people to mail their ballots back early, and do use the drop boxes if it's getting close to election day where the mail might not get to us in time. I am happy to answer any questions that may come up if council has any questions.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Stoller. Questions from council? Seeing none, best of luck.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the city clerk will be back to give that same presentation in a work session form, likely January the 8th, so that we can have it duplicate times available. And for those that happen to be listening that weren't listening this evening, might be listening in January. And the information is all available on the website as well. So we have multiple opportunities for access to those ballot boxes particularly.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to our first, I guess, presentation or speaker, hearing from our lobbyists. So we have Mr. Gil Romero and Mr. Alec Romero to the podium, please. Talking about in preparation for this next legislative session. You just have to turn it on.
Got it. Well, thank you very much, members of City Council. We were offered the opportunity to present to you virtually, but we wanted to come in person. We wanted to come in person to thank you for the privilege to represent the city of Pueblo. I'm pretty certain I can say this. I can say this with certainty, is that we are the only lobbying firm. All 3 members both grew up here and lived here. And we love the city, and it's a privilege for us to represent the city again. We had that opportunity earlier in the year, last year, when the ozone air bill was introduced, and we worked alongside all of you and with Evraz and their lobbying team to make some significant amendments to that particular piece of legislation. It wasn't perfect, but in the end, at least it was something that was palatable to the city and to Evraz. We're going to go through a slide presentation, but I wanted to speak to you a little bit about the process that we hope that you will become more involved in. Those 3 months that we represented you, it was pretty, we came on, we had to do some things pretty quickly, and we made the best use of the advocacy and the best use of your time. This legislative session, we really want you to be involved. We're going to ask you, and because people ask us at the Capitol, we want members of City Council to testify on bills. And I think because of COVID, it's just become so much easier in the process for you to testify virtually, but they want to hear your voices. They want to hear the impact of particular legislation on the city of Pueblo. And so we're going to take advantage of your expertise as business owners, as members of City Council to testify on bills. And there are going to be a significant number of bills that are going to impact Pueblo. As you know, the session starts January 10th. We had a sort of a preview of what the session is going to look like with a special session this past month regarding property taxes and HH. And we'll talk to you a little bit more about that process. But it's clear that there was a lot of acrimony during that session. And we expect the session to, as I said, to be very substantive with a lot of legislation that'll impact the city. So I'm going to briefly go through the one committee that is, although there are a number of interim committees that met this year, including the interim committee on air pollution and ozone. But the committee that I want to talk to you just a little bit about tonight, because I know we only have 20 minutes, is the Joint Budget Committee. They started their work in November, and I think there's really a lot of opportunity in the governor's budget for the city to take advantage of some innovative programs, especially around housing and law enforcement. So I'm going to briefly go through just some of the grant proposals that are in the governor's budget. Now, I will tell you that I was so excited to meet George that I stepped on my glasses in the process of shaking his hands. And so I may need somebody to hold this side of my glasses as I do my presentation. We'll see how it goes. But it was worth it. So let me just talk to you a little bit about some of the priorities. Clearly in the governor's budget, there's going to be more money for housing. The governor is also put an emphasis on criminal justice, and there are going to be grant programs available to cities to make cities more safe. There's going to be more investments in healthcare. I had this brief conversation with Councilor Flores. There's going to be more on property taxes. I don't know if they're going to do much more than they did in the special session, but we'll see in the 24 session. And obviously a lot of discussion around energy and air quality and climate. Just to give you a sense of some of the priorities for the governor, in terms of the state funding, for our schools, the governor has recommended eliminating the budget stabilization factor for the first time since 2009. Investing in the universal preschool program that continues to save parents an average of $6,000 per year. Working with the legislature on unprecedented commitments to the support of family of youth with high acuity behavioral health needs. Strengthening small and rural businesses by investing in economic development programs across the state, including small business development centers. Major investments to support environmental justice. A historic investment to reduce the competency restoration wait list. And I'll just speak briefly to that one because it impacts the Institute of Mental Health in Pueblo. The Institute has been under a lawsuit for several years. They're having to pay significant fines. Individuals that are sent to the Institute of Mental Health are staying longer than they should. So this is a priority for the governor to get outside of those fines that we're having to pay, and that hopefully those fines could go back into the budget and pay for more important issues. And of course, the state has a fairly significant savings account of a 15% reserve. So now just to speak, specifically about the things that we would like to work with council on this next year. The governor has $136.7 million for housing. Key elements here are funds to encourage transit-oriented housing, accessory dwelling units, workforce housing, and commercial to residential conversions. The second priority is making Colorado one of the top safest state, and that 136 million has a number of grants that the city of Pueblo would be able to avail itself of. The second priority, making Colorado one of the top 10 safest states, $36.9 million. This biggest piece of this proposal is $14.4 million for auto theft prevention, followed by $7.5 million for crime prevention grants to local communities. Again, another opportunity for Pueblo. The governor has also put in resources for healthcare, $138.3 million. These funds would be used to increase base wages for home healthcare workers, support high acuity youth pediatric behavioral health care, strengthening the public health infrastructure and school-based behavioral health programs. And as I said before, the governor's advancing his path to 100% renewable energy. We'll talk about that in terms of impact of Pueblo as the session begins. So that's sort of a snapshot of the budget. We see a lot of opportunity for the city as we progress. We'll talk a little bit when we finish our slides, and hopefully you'll ask questions about a number of the issues involving some of the failed measures that the governor had around growth issues, water issues, and obviously and mainly around those two issues. But I'll turn it over to Alec to talk to you about a sort of a session preview.
Good evening, City Council and staff. My name is Alec Romero. It's a pleasure to be here today and a privilege to be on the government affairs team that represents the city of Pueblo. As for our engagement process with you all, we would like to set up weekly or bi-weekly meetings to keep you all updated on legislation, their impacts, and also to gather feedback with all of you in terms of supporting, opposing, and amending legislation. We will provide you with a bill tracker link. This link will allow you all to stay informed and stay engaged on the legislation that's moving through the process. This bill tracker link is continuously updated for you all, and it will allow you to see important bill information such as sponsors, status updates, and fiscal notes that are associated with those bills. Our team will provide weekly reports throughout the session that will highlight that key information for you. And we will continue to monitor those bills closely. Next, I'm going to just briefly give you an overview of the leadership changes and the state budget outlook for next year and highlight some of the potential legislation we're hearing about so far. So in terms of leadership, Senator Robert Rodriguez will be the new Senate Majority Leader, and Senator Faith Winter will be the new Assistant Majority Leader. Senator Paul Lundeen will remain as Minority Leader. The Speaker of the House is Representative Julie McCluskey. The Majority Leader is Representative Monica Duran. The Minority Leader is Representative Mike Lynch, and the Assistant Minority Leader is Representative Rose Puglisi. The Democrats hold a 23-12 seat majority in the Senate and a 46-19 seat advantage in the House. As Gil already mentioned, some of the proposed funding initiatives by the governor, after you account for his proposals and inflationary increases, provider rate increases, and caseload growth, there's an estimated $23 million in new spending available for the legislature going into the 24-25 budget year. So this will limit the funding options for new policies the legislature brings forth in the 2024 session. So going into the next session, we're already hearing about new legislation that would be of interest to the city of Pueblo. Many of these bills do not have bill drafts and are simply bill titles at this point. As they continue to go through the stakeholder process, we expect that elements of the major land use bill from last year will be incorporated into several targeted pieces of legislation. The first 5 bills listed on that slide have been proposed by the governor's office, and there is attached funding to those bills that have been set aside in legislative placeholders. We have been involved in some early discussions as it relates to some of these bills, and we are still in the process of gathering information and intel related to the content, what will be in these bills. They're subject to change until we see bill text and language. As we progress through the stakeholder process in the coming weeks and months ahead, we will share that information with you and make sure to keep you all informed in terms of unfunded mandates and any infringements on local control. For any of the bills listed there on that slide, we can provide you more information and certainly follow up. Really briefly, I just wanted to touch on some of the legislation that was passed during the special session. They passed the major property tax relief bill. Something to keep in mind, this is only temporary, so it's only for the upcoming year. And so what they did is they reduced the assessment rate for residential property taxes, not commercial property taxes. They increased the deduction from $15,000 to $55,000. The assessment rate went from 6.765% to 6.7%, and $200 million will be backfilled for local governments, fire districts, ambulance, and EMS services. Another bill they passed in the special session was the identical Tabor refund bill. This will flatten Tabor refunds for all Coloradans in the state for next year. The The third bill that they passed was an increased earned income tax credit matching credit. This doubles the state's matching credit from 25% to 50% of the federal earned income tax credit. And it sends money to over 400,000 Coloradans. And the last bill that we expect a lot of work to come out of is the property tax force bill. This sets up the task force to basically figure out a long-term solution for property taxes in the state of Colorado, and they will begin that work here shortly. With that, I'll hand it back over to Gil.
So just a couple of things to follow up on, and we're happy to answer your questions. Although the interim committee on ozone didn't have the authority to draft bills, they just had their last meeting this week. We will see a bill, and we'll probably see several bills that potentially could impact businesses in Pueblo, including Evraz. Once we get that information, obviously we're going to get it to you, and we're going to want your response and your input. One of the things that we're hoping that we can encourage you to do this year, just because we'll have a full year to work on this, but the session will start on January 10th, so we'll have to get it up pretty quickly. Is with the bill tracker during our Mondays, or when we do our weekly presentations to you, there may be some bills where we're talking to either our local delegation, our senators and representatives, or others across the state that are going to say, we need Pueblo to take a position on this bill. So we're going to encourage you to do that. That it's your call. You make those decisions. But we were asked last year a couple of times, and people want to know what Pueblo is thinking on these bills. And so whether it's supporting a bill or opposing a bill or amending a bill, we're going to come to you and say, can we do that? And part of it is because we're required by the Secretary of State to report that. And obviously, with the 3 months that we represented you this year, it was mainly around that ozone bill. But there are going to be a number of bills that are going to come through this session where they're going to want to know what the city is doing. We have provided, as I said, the bill tracker we use is really sophisticated. It really updates quickly. So you have the best information available. But the one thing we want to encourage you to do, and we've left it with your staff, is we've given you all of our contact information, our emails, our cell phones. We encourage you to call us. If you have a question and it's not showing up, that's what we're here for. And that's why there's, 3 Romeros to do this work. We want to be able to represent and provide the best advocacy that we can. So it doesn't matter whether it's late night, early morning, we're available. And so we really want to encourage you to become more active in this process. And we're excited to work with you. And if you see some things that aren't working quite right, then let us know, and we'll adapt, and we'll make the changes so that we can provide you the best advocacy endeavor. There are going to be, it's going to be pretty fast and furious from the day that we start January 10th. And we expect that first week, each legislator gets 5 bills. They're pre-filed bills. They'll have to introduce. Those will probably get introduced in their first 5 days of the session. So we'll probably see 100 bills come out, and there will be a number of bills that obviously will impact the city. So I'll stop there. And if you have any questions, we're happy to take your questions.
Well, great. Thank you, Mr. Gil Romero and Mr. Alec Romero, for that presentation. Excited to have you representing us at the state again this year. Questions from council at all? Councilor Maestri?
Ms. Solano, if we have these bills that are affecting air quality here in Pueblo, we are a manufacturing town. It is very imperative that we be educated on where the companies that are homed here, where they stand. Are they meeting EP? I'm sure they're meeting the EPA requirements, all of that. We can't just have this affect our manufacturing town if they're going to do things like that. It could really impact us greatly, because that's our main source of income for a lot of people. And so outside of what they have to say about it, what do we as Pueblo, the health department, EPA, and what that we're in compliance, because of course we're going to want to fight against what we know. And I don't know how much any of us know about, the companies here and the air quality,
Yeah.
and that they are following protocol, procedures, regulation, so forth.
I don't know if I'm supposed to raise my hand or if I could respond to
Mhm.
that. Just quickly, one of the things I was really proud of when we represented you during the session on that ozone bill was companies that were impacted really appreciated Pueblo, coming to the table to
Mhm.
communicate to legislators, not just Evraz as a business here, but for legislators to hear sort of how is this going to impact Pueblo? How is it going to impact the community? How is it going to impact the labor force? What's it going to do to the housing issues? What's it going to do to the public safety issues of some, a company can't meet these requirements and has to reduce the labor force, or if it's made a huge investment in its company, thinking these were the rules that were in place at the time. So you made an impact during those 3 months because you took that next step to say we're going to be more active in this process.
Yes, and we educate when we're being educated, it's public education. Our community's educated, they can come behind us and support us. I mean, this is our city. It affects everyone in this city when they start to put regulations, so for, especially on manufacturing, and we're a highly manufacturing town. So all the education helps not just us, but it helps the community understand, because they can make just as many phone calls up to the Capitol or get on Zoom as well as we can, and come in force. That's what happens when you accomplish things when you come in force.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Flores? Oh, I'm sorry. Quickly, Ms. Solano, you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to respond to Councilor Maestri that in advance notice of maybe working with the chamber and working with Petco, a list for city council of the companies that are involved in manufacturing that any one of these bills might affect. And we'll certainly run that past Mr. Romero as well. So you can have as much advance information as necessary, and we can start to put that together, soon, so that you. Thank you.
Yeah, the tracker application that you guys have, is that right on your website under Capital Success Group? Is that how we access it?
Councilor Flores, we're actually going to send to your staff the bill tracker,
Okay,
and it will have we will sort. We look at key phrases. Anything that has city in it, we're going to so we'll send you a slew of bills, and then when we meet on our regular meeting, you'll actually get that bill tracker sent to your email. You'll be able to click it and look at each bill, and within that bill, you can see who the sponsors are, who's opposed to it, who's supporting the bill, who's wanting to amend the bill, and then obviously we'll want your input on that. But there will be bills, that first grouping of bills where you'll probably say these bills have no impact on us, and we'll take them off the bill tracker. We'll also create this year for you what's called wish we could find a better term for it, but we call it the hot list. And that hot list is really the priority bills where you're saying these are the 4 we want to know every step along this process. And so we'll create within that bill tracker, you'll see the hot list first, and then you'll see the other bills. And then we'll sort of sort through them and say, these aren't bills that we really want to follow. We'll keep them on the bill tracker, but these are the ones we're going to do. So it's a really, when we started with this process with Capital Watch, it wasn't as sophisticated as now, but it's pretty easy. One of the things I said to Councilor Martinez is that we'll come back when the new city council just to go through that, and we can certainly come down to do a little tutorial on it, but it's pretty self-explanatory if you need it.
yeah, my question was really maybe if the two of you could elaborate more on this special session and what this bill, since it's just short-lived, is just a fix this year. I don't think people realize the impact that the new assessments of their properties and how much that's going to affect their tax bill in April. Is there any way of quantifying what the reduction that the legislature did? How much? Let's say that somebody, can expect to pay $1,000 more for whatever the valuation is of a house. What did this session do? Is there a fraction that people can at least assume that they can knock off 40%, 30%, 20%? Or is that too difficult to do just because of the way the mill levies are established?
Yeah, I think the reduction that Alec explained that's in this, and it's a temporary fix for this property tax. I think that the fact is, and people really need to understand, is that I think some people thought the special session was about reducing property tax. It was, but it was reducing the increase in the property tax. And that's the most difficult, thing to understand, because I think for every single, I wouldn't say every single, but for a large portion of property owners, taxes are going to go up. It's just not going to be as significant as it was. And what, as I explained, I think there's going to be a sort of a phase two to, of the proposal that failed on the ballot, but one that'll be more impact the reduction, at least on residential. I also think, something that we'll want to talk to all of you about is the commercial side of this, which impacts businesses, which wasn't impacted by this. And I think you need a voice on that. And I think, for small business owners, that's a significant issue. So taxes will be an important piece of this. And so the 5-day session, it was a temporary fix. We'll more to come on this one.
Right. And then my last question has to do with the Tabor refund. As I understand, Colorado citizens can expect about $800 in a Tabor. And how do you qualify for that? Does that go to everybody, or is that?
So it is based apart on income. But if you look at the demographics of Pueblo, and I think a significant portion of Pueblo will get the maximum benefit of Tabor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Hippolyte?
So if I may, Councilor Flores, I just want to provide some context of why it's so complicated to break that down, individual property. Many of the states in SB 20 or 23B 001, many of the triggers depend upon the size of the population and what of the property, where the property is located. So to drill down that to the detail of letting people know on average might this save you is very difficult, on top of what Mr. Romero said. It sort of depends on where you live and how many citizens and or how many properties are in your property. But in general, sort of what the state did is capped how much it can increase, if that makes any sense. It's capped how much it can increase over last year.
Rule. I think the assessments of everybody's property in Pueblo County went up somewhere between 30 to 35%. And so, in my mind, I'm thinking my tax bill is going to go up, 33%. I mean, that's the logical thing to think about. And that's why that question, I think, is really important.
I mean, hopefully in the city of Pueblo, we won't see that high of a tax bill because of some of the changes that the legislators made for this 1 year. But we want to sort of to be clear that this is a 1 year temporary fix.
Sure.
And unfortunately, I think, and Ms. Solano, correct me if I'm wrong, the mayor's office is trying to facilitate a conversation with the other taxing entities in the city to determine whether the city, in coordination with the other taxing entities in the city, can do anything to help property owners or reduce some of that tax bill by more. That conversation is ongoing. Unfortunately, the rolls have to be certified by January 10th. So we're trying to facilitate that conversation very fast.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Romero. I know, so Prop II passed overwhelmingly. And how I understand it is that it's essentially going to create more funds dedicated to UPK. Can you talk a little bit about what that tangibly means for families? Or how the passage of Prop II is going to, what that is going to translate into, more, is that more hours for their 4-year-olds, or what is that going to look like? Do you know?
Yeah, let us, that one I haven't followed as closely. Let us get back to you and get you some more information on that one, and we'll send it to you.
And then for it's great to hear that JPC in the state is really going to free up a lot of money for municipalities for grants. And it sounds like they're already appropriated. Do you know when they'll be available to apply for?
So this is in the governor's budget for this year. So those funds should be available upon signature of the long bill, which usually occurs in April or May, but probably more than likely, because our budget is a July budget, probably not available until July.
Okay.
And I wanted to correct for the record, Councilor Flores, I forgot that Senator Hendrickson actually is the one that carried the bill, but it's a flat refund. But we expect,
Most people from Pueblo will see an increase in their tax refund as a result of that bill.
about $840 some. So I apologize.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Romero and Mr. Romero?
Yeah,
Counselor Maestri?
I would just like to see, all these grants that we have for housing and everything that's actually coming from a pot somewhere. It's not being printed, and so when we talk about increases in property tax and increases in taxes, that's why we have that, because we have all these candy of grants. But I guess that's how the world functions.
Well, the one thing I will say is that the budget that I discussed with you now, the governor describes it as returning to normal budgeting. For the past 2 years, because of COVID, we've had so many federal funds come into the state, and I think the state is relied on them substantially, and now those funds are going away. So this is the last year, the last funds that are going to be spent. But the state budget doesn't have a lot of extra money this year, but I do think at least some of the areas that the governor has prioritized are important, because it's not going to go to some state agency. These are going to be funds that are going to be dispersed by the DOLA, the Department of Local Affairs, through the Department of Public Safety for our city police. So I mean, at least there's some opportunity within that budget where hopefully we can help, and the city can avail itself of some of those. But I understand your point.
Thank you.
Well, we will see you in January.
Okay, we will see you in January.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much
Gilkey,
indeed.
Mr.
It's a
Allen.
privilege. Thank you.
All right, moving on to our last agenda item, talking about 2024 CSAC recommendations. So can I have Mr. Gallagher? And I also believe I see Mr. Montoya coming to the podium. And whenever you are ready to talk about CSAC.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. With me tonight is Tony Montoya, Chairman of the Community Services Advisory Commission, and we are here tonight to deliver the 2024 recommendations from CSAC. Through the application process this year, CSAC received 33 applications, totaling requests of $2.1 million. The CSAC commissioners' due diligence this year was quite intense. Actually, they met about 3 times a week for at least 5 months, in addition to the regular meetings. And normally on this slide, I put together kind of a cumulative hours of what they've done for the community, and I couldn't even venture a guess. So I think I just put countless hours, because I couldn't count them. But they worked extremely hard this year, harder. I worked them harder than before, that's for sure. Tony will attest. But in the process, we got a cohesive team going. I'm really proud of the way the commissioners work together. And they immersed themselves in the 23 applicants' processes, interviewed them and discovered what issues they were encountering through the year. And they were actually able to create coordination between the other agencies they had interviewed. And some agencies might be stuck on one issue and they would recommend, well, have you tried over here? Because this is what they do. So it was helpful bringing together, but it also built everyone's knowledge of how the community really does work and how the services are accessed and what connections need to be made or have been made. So with that, I will turn it over to Tony to give you a rundown of the recommendations.
Yeah, I would just add, my thanks to all of you for allowing us to come before you and make this report. I would also preface my comments by saying that, like you all, with these budget cuts and the issues, we've suggested to all these organizations and asked the questions if they've really looked at other grant opportunities, because after our interview, I took it upon myself to tell them there's a slim chance that you're going to get 100% of what you're asking for, simply because of the lack of funds that are available. And they kind of knew that ahead of time, but I think when we write grants, I've been involved in writing grants. I've always tried to get as much as I could because I wanted to make the programs much better. So we did the best we could with what we had. And I'll just go through the breakdown. After school programs, we're recommending a 12.2%. There were 3 programs that applied through 3 agencies for $116,000 plus. Childcare was 10.9%. There were 2 programs, 2 agencies for $103,937. Senior services, the percentage was 6.7, 5 programs, 1 agency. That particular program asked for funds for different entities within their organization. They wanted their goals identified, several different things that they wanted to do. Veteran services programs, 2.2, 1 program, 1 agency for $21,000. Education, 2.7, 2 programs, 2 agencies for $26,000. I'm just rounding these numbers off, folks. Arts and culture, 5.9, 4 programs, 4 agencies for $55,988. Food security, 8.8%, 2 programs, 2 agencies for $84,000. Disability services, 3.9%, 4 programs, 4 agencies for over $37,000. Victim services, 12.9%, 4 programs, 4 agencies for $122,984. Mental health, 8.9, 3 programs, 3 agencies for $84,786. Homelessness, 19.6%, 4 programs, 4 agencies, $186,993. Substance abuse, 1.6%, 1 program, 1 agency for over $15,000. And health services, 3.8, 1 program, 1 agency for $36,000. We had these 32 programs that applied, and I'll just go through real quick. There's some more numbers. I don't know if you want me to read them or if you just want to look at them here, because there's 32 of them, and you can see what the numbers are. But I think the numbers that I just gave you are kind of telling in terms of the percentages. We, as Brian was saying, we did talk to these folks as we interviewed them about connecting with other agencies when we found that there was a gap in what they were doing or they needed more resources. We shared that information with them. I almost feel like there needs to be another process or another way that we could meet with these organizations to help them better define what they need and do some outreach on their own to get together with some of these entities? I know there's been talk about getting like organizations together and duplication. And with respect to duplication, what I found over the years, I've been on this commission for several years, is that there is never enough funds to serve them. And there's always more need than there are funds. And there, quite frankly, there's more need than there are organizations that can meet those needs. So we could certainly use some other organizations that are doing the same thing, or if there's a way to help them to increase their staff. In some cases, some of these requests ask for funds for more staff because they had more clients than they could serve with the staff that they had. And that was kind of telling for me. So would you prefer that I go through all these numbers, or can you just, we can go through the various screens and you can see what they asked for?
We'll go through the screens at a time, and if there's any particular issues. From the percentage breakdown, homelessness, childcare, after school programs were the highest percentages of where CSAC awarded the funding. And on this page, we've got the C's. Through here, a new agency that CSAC has not funded in the past is Colorado Legal Services, but I think everyone's aware that they help with eviction services and legal issues for low income individuals. Eastside Childcare is one of the agencies providing childcare and one of the larger grantees. Through here, we have Mariposa. They are in the process of shifting their delivery services, and CSAC knew that was coming before they announced it. So they rearranged their request. They didn't fund the elements that Mariposa is dropping out. So they were intended to do childcare, but they're having issues getting the facility renovated and up and running before the 24 year is over. So no childcare was funded in the CSAC, and it's just on domestic violence here. My kid is mental health services for youth. Posada, Mount Carmel, and Nature and Wildlife Discovery, similar to what we've done in the past. Child Advocacy Center, Pueblo Cooperative Care is handling all of their programs, the mobile shower, the Meals on Wheels, and the food nutrition. Diversified Industries, that is an interesting request this year. They've their whole mission is to get disabled individuals to work. And when you work so much, Social Security or the benefits are removed from the individual doing the work. So they're trying to fund a coordinator to help provide services to find or supplant assistance that is removed because you were working. So they're working to keep people working and not be penalized because they're working. Pueblo Hispanic Education Foundation is providing grant scholarships as they normally do. Municipal Band. Pueblo Rescue Mission is providing shelter services. SEL Tutoring is about one of the only agencies helping individuals get GEDs. And they're a very exciting crew. Typically, they receive a small amount, but they're very appreciative. And the last two are the Arc of Pueblo Guardianship and SRDA with the 5 programs for aging, Meals on Wheels, foster grandparents, and other items is what they've requested. For a total combined funding, city county for $955,500. One agency was not recommended, and all other agencies move forward.
I did want to take a minute to thank all those commission members that were a part of this: Shanna Farmer from the United Way, Danielle Betamestas, Cindy Lau, Mary Lee, Sandra Scherer, Nick Trejo, Anita Kofer, and our co-chair or vice chair, Michael Misservy. And certainly Brian and our county representative have been helpful in everything that we've had to do, scheduling meetings and that sort of thing. And as he said, there were a lot of meetings, but I got to tell you that it's rewarding. I must also admit that it's difficult when you see all these proposals and all the need that's out there, and you can't help them all as much as you'd like. I understand why. We're all going through, even personally, I think we're all going through, as the previous presentation was saying, you as a city entity are struggling with some issues, and it goes down all the way to the individual, and we're having to deal with that in these nonprofits, and hopefully things will get better. I know COVID was very difficult on a lot of agencies, and they're still trying to kind of get out of that. Yeah. So I appreciate all that you do and the funds that you provide. I think it's well worth it. I really appreciate that.
So we stand for questions.
Well, great. Thank you, Mr. Montoya, for all of, and even just the whole CSAC committee, for, meeting 3 days a week for many hours for 5 months. That's a lot of time and capacity dedicated to this. So, thank you for everyone that served on the CSAC. On the Community Service Advisory Commission, what questions are there from council? Councilor Maestri?
Well, I'm surprised that you say that they need some sort of resource where they can collaborate and work on grant funding and so forth. And that's what we purchased the collaboration center for United Way.
And I'm hoping that that'll kick off here pretty quick, and the word will get out, because that was an excellent idea. I mean, when I read about that,
Because you're sitting on the
Shannon about it.
Shanna's right on your board.
Right.
Yeah. So for you to come here and say that was kind of surprising. I thought that was already purchased and they haven't even closed on it. Oh,
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. The other thing that I was struggling with is, as I read some of the proposals, especially for the smaller agencies that don't have a lot of support staff, they could certainly use some help in helping to write the grants.
well, that's what they were said in their presentation, that
Yeah.
they'd be providing a
Yeah.
group,
And that's going to be helpful,
a grant writer to help everyone that was part of their collaborative center.
because I know last year we didn't fund an organization, and it was, when we talked to them, we knew what they wanted to do, and they knew it would be helpful. And it was reaching to a group that others weren't getting to.
Mhm.
But the proposal was written such that we really couldn't say, yeah, you should be funded, because there were so many gaps in it, and they needed to really support what they were doing verbally or in
And
writing.
who did you turn away? What type of?
What was that?
Nacho Eats,
Nacho Eats, yeah.
What is-
North Avondale Horse Owners Association. It was a therapeutic riding center, and they weren't quite out the gate on that. They were operating out of their house, and
I thought they had that last year too.
that was the one last year that didn't go through. The one this year, I'm sorry, was the Masonic Lodge. It was a mentoring and scholarship type of agency, but it was based in Denver. And the Masonic Lodge itself is a more of a private organization, and sometimes when you intermix public funding and a private organization, you don't have a good outcome.
Mhm. And what were the 3 after-school programs for Boys and Girls Club?
Those were the various facilities. Each program is its own clubhouse. So it's the same program, but at Avondale location, Sprague location, they have various locations.
The Boys and Girls Club
Mhm.
offers those programs.
Mhm.
And there's also a tutoring program.
Yeah, I just know we had funded that teen center over the
Yeah.
10 programs at 15,000 apiece over the summer. And I went to a couple and there was like 4 kids there.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
program was not successful. That was a different startup. It's not in addition to their normal programs,
Yeah.
but you're right that that particular program.
At 15,000 a week.
I just want to note for the record that their numbers did pick up. It was a very successful program for the teen center, and that their numbers did pick up.
Okay, well, that wasn't included in the CSAC request, but it's just the normal clubhouse operating programs.
Yeah, it was based off of the $15,000 was based off of 75 participants. Did they ever get 75 participants?
I believe actually, Ms. Lano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the total numbers came back just under 100. They did not spend the full ARPA award, but the request is currently, I think, in the city attorney's office, as they've come to ask for the extension now that the holidays are coming and spring break is coming in. What can they arrange and organize for opportunities for Friday and Saturday nights for teens? And so I think that will be a modification to their subrecipient agreement for the extension.
And that was 100 total,
It was 100 total for
Yes,
the summer
not
month,
75 a night.
not 75 a night,
Thank you.
100 total.
Over how many weeks?
Mr. Hippolyte?
Just to inform council, I believe the mayor granted the extension. It's already been executed.
Regardless, I want to make sure that we're staying on subject and talking about the proposals in front of us. Any other questions about the proposals or the CSAC recommendations in front of us? I just want to, I want to commend too. I really think that the more that we can invest in prevention as a community, the better long-term effects that we're going to have in terms of, a workforce and a healthier community. And so I really liked seeing how many childcare based or even, youth programming, because I think that that's really investing in that next generation. So I'm really glad to see that we're investing in prevention and our young people and our children. So thank you so much for that presentation, and please go back to your CSAC folks and say thanks for all your hard work as well.
We sure will. Thank you.
Mr. Gallagher.
CSAC has 2 action items that need to come forth to council. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Tony is extremely diligent in getting the bylaws adopted by the city and the county. CSAC has been in operation since 2003. Attempts to write the bylaws and get them approved by both the city and county have proven futile in 20 years. And we are ready to go. They have been approved by both city and county attorneys, and we need to present them for ratification. So that will be an action item coming forth. And we need to amend and extend the CSAC agreement authorizing the grant requests that were detailed in this presentation. So if council has any direction for staff.
I think we're okay to proceed. Is it going to be on first reading at the on the
January.
26th?
January.
Oh, in January. Mr. Hippolyte?
You only have to approve them by resolution.
Great.
So it's only subject to 1 reading. What? The bylaws?
A bylaws resolution.
Yes.
Amending and extending CSAC as ordinance.
That would be an ordinance, yes.
Sorry, I'm off page.
One of the reasons that I continued this year was because when I first got on CSAC, I got on a committee to do the bylaws and they hadn't been done. So that's my mission as part of the CSAC. The other thing I wanted to note was that we have 9 members on our committee, and I believe it calls for 15 possible. So if you know of anybody, I'll just make a plea to you all. If you know anybody through your contacts that would be interested in being a part of CSAC, it would sure help, because that would spread the work to more people. But it also gives us an idea, because the folks that are on there now come from various areas. And when we interview some of these agencies, there's some feedback that comes from these groups who've had some contact with them, who have heard about them and what kind of work they do, the success or the lack of success, so that we can make recommendations to them. So it would sure help. The other thing is we did put an ad in the paper, and we got 2 members that applied. Unfortunately, the bylaws and the resolution or the agreement states that you can't be a member of the city or the county staff, and both of them were, so we couldn't take advantage of that.
Well, thanks for putting that call out to action. I'm sure that even our own city social media can probably help with that, push that message out.
I'd appreciate that.
Council recently appointed 2 CSAC members, so we're at 11.
Great. And I think PACOG that's on the agenda this month.
Maybe I misspoke there. It's in process. But
Great.
We have 2 in queue, either done or in queue.
Well, thank you so much for that
You
presentation.
bet. Thank you.
We look forward to seeing those on the appropriate agenda in January. And so the remaining of the work session we're going to adjourn into executive session. And so I go into executive session for determining positions relative to matters subject to negotiations, developing a strategy for negotiations, and or instructing negotiations about the confidential economic development opportunity as authorized by CRS 24-6 4024E. So if we're all in favor to go into executive session, or sorry, I'll say aye.
Aye.
Counselor Graham was the first. Counselor Flores was the second. Everyone said aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Great. We're moving into exec session. And we will pick up in 10 minutes for the regular session.